Finally, I'm in.
Yeah. So we begin with the session. Uh, to connect, collaborate, and conquer, going by our vision statement, we, the Alumni Association of St. John, has come up with the Spark Alumni Interface, a platform to provide direct interaction between its students and alumni. I urge your students to make best opportunity of this uh, event. With this, I would like to begin our first session today by introducing the speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our alumni and a good friend of mine, Ms. Prajakta Masurkar. A passed out alumni of the batch 2008-2012. After completing her graduation from St. John's, she has worked with Tata Consultancy Services Mumbai for 2 years as a process associate in pharmacovigilance. She pursued her MPharm in Drug Development and Regulatory Affairs from Naseem Munji Institute of Management Studies, Mumbai. Professionally, post her master's, she worked in Glenmark Pharmaceuticals, Mumbai 1 year as pharmacovigilance officer, working on assessment of the safety profile and benefit risk of development, generated safety records, and assessed the effectiveness of risk minimization measures of drug. Currently, she is doing her internship at Intuitive, a surgical device company and leader in minimal invasive care and the pioneer of robotic assisted surgery in the world, located in Silicon Valley, California. She is also pursuing her PhD in pharmaceutical health outcome and policy at University of Houston, working on dissertation in dementia and real-world evidence. Her research is related to epidemiology, biostatistics, economic modeling, and large databases analysis to understand issues in the dementia population and generating insight to the real-world decision makers in area of public health policies. With this brief introduction, I would now ask Prajakta to take over the session. Over to you.
Thank you, Sahaya. I hope I'm audible. Like you can hear me, right? Yeah. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen? Sahaya, you can see my screen, right? I'm not able to
Yes,
hear
we
anything.
can see your screen.
Okay, then I'll go ahead. Okay, so good morning, everyone. It's good morning for you people, but it's Friday night for me. So I'm just waiting for my Friday night after this. So I am Prajakta. I'm a proud alumni of first batch of SGIPR. Currently, I am in my third year of PhD, as I mentioned. So I'm going to talk today about COVID-19 and its impact on the study abroad plans for most of the students, particularly Indian students. So the brief outline of today's presentation, I just don't want to talk about COVID and its impact. I thought I would just briefly introduce you to the application process to study in United States, and then moving forward, how the COVID-19 has impacted admission process for Indian students and Indian students who are currently here, and then my final thoughts on what you can do or what is happening. So I think you people have to go on mute because I can hear noises. So before I start, I want to ask a question. So there's a poll that I don't want this to be a very boring session because it's already Saturday morning. I know your weekend is ruined, but I thought I'll start with a poll. So I want to ask you guys the first question, if you can answer it for me. Like, do you think that Saturday is a bad idea for a webinar? Can you guys see the poll? And I want you people to just vote if you can. And I don't see anybody voting actually. Yeah, there are only 2 votes right now. Okay. So yeah, most of people agreed that Saturday is not a good idea to keep a webinar, and it was not my idea, it was Sahaya's idea. So you can blame her. And I want to start with giving you a brief idea, like what happens, like Indian students are like major cohort in United States. And most of the students, like they are the second largest cohort. And when I came to United States in 2017, around 186,000 students came to United States. And in 2019, government of India expected 400,000 students to come. And by this year, United States is expecting 250,000 students to come for their higher education. And United States remains the top destination for study abroad. And I want to, like I saw that few people are not very sure whether they want to pursue their plans here in United States, but I want to just give you a brief outline that how you can go with the process, not only for United States, but also for UK or Canada or Australia. So first step that I would say is like start doing your research that where do you want to go for your graduate school? I know it's a time consuming process, so you want to devote a lot of time doing this. Secondly, try to find a school that matches your needs. Don't go for a school that you find is good. Try to fit in, like see what you need from the school. And I would say that start your research regarding where you want to go, how you want to go, like at least 12 to 18 months before your academic year. So if you're planning to do your fall 2021 admission, start doing your research from this year itself, like give 1 year or 18 months timeline. Secondly, define your priorities, like why do you want to study in United States or any other country? Where you will be a better fit, like which country or which program you will be good at. And then think about what is university providing in that terms, like select your university according to your interest. And think about your financial assistance, like most of the university do provide financial assistance to many students. So you can actually do your research in those lines, thinking that which university has good funding. And right now in these times, you want to think that about financial aspects more importantly. Then think about the application and financial aid deadline. So for universities, it is like if you want to do your application, the deadline will be different. And if you want to do your scholarship deadlines, the deadlines would be different. Like normally, let's say January is your application deadline, but the financial assistance deadline would be in October. So you want to probably be aware of this. So while doing your research, that make an Excel sheet and jot down that, yeah, I need a financial assistance, so I'm going to apply beforehand. And then where do you want to live in United States? So just because you think that you see New York and California mostly in American movies, just don't plan to do your education there. Think about it that which university you want to be with, and then choose your options. Finances, I think financing your study is most important aspect, and you should start your financial planning as early as possible. And it should be the first thing probably you should do. Try to think that how much you're willing to spend, and is your career goal and your educational goal are in alignment. And think about the location, like if you're thinking about New York, it is going to be expensive. If you're thinking about California, it is going to be expensive. Think about the taxes, think about the housing costs, think about the groceries, monthly expenses, everything. Secondly, if I would say, like I stay in Texas, so it's tax-free state. So I know the cost of living is low. So all these aspects should be considered while doing your financial planning for your studies. Then your application, the most important part, is that keep your GRE scores, your TOEFL scores, your IELTS scores ready at least 6 months before you start your application, and make a note about the deadlines and make a note about the cutoff that every university has in terms of the GRE score. Like some universities will say that like if you have 320 and plus, we are giving you scholarship. You don't need to pay anything. So try to target those things while doing your application. And each application has different needs. Okay, you need your letter of recommendation, you need your SOPs, you need to be aware that your GRE score will be directly be reported to the universities. So when you go to give your exams, like your standardized exams, just keep your university list ready. Then plan everything beforehand. Don't do it in like very hasteful manner. Then the next thing is personal data information. I would say keep your personal information consistent. So I have seen that it has happened with most of the students. So when you go for your GRE, use the name that is there on your passport and use the same name for your application. If you don't have a middle name, but your passport has a middle name, then keep it consistent. So I have seen that people are having a lot of issues when they have just even a letter or initial mistakes in their personal information, and then they have to come here and do a lot of documentation just to correct that small mistake. So be aware of those things, that you want to have a consistent information. Then your SOPs, the statement of purpose is something that you write to university, telling them what are your strengths, what are your skills, and why you are a good match for the university and for the program. So try to make it personal. Don't like write or copy paste from somewhere something from the internet. No, make it your personal story. That helps more than anything else. And keep your transcripts ready. So your transcripts are supposed to be mailed directly to the university, or some universities tell you to do it personally, or some universities like in Canada and Australia, they would want you to send the transcript via WES portal. So be aware of all these requirements before you start your application. Your letter of recommendation, you should ask your professors, your employers to provide you letter of recommendation. And you should give your professors an idea that, yeah, you are applying for this particular program, and that these are your plans with the program, and you want them to recommend you. Make them aware of the deadlines for the recommendation, because if you're going to do your application and if your LOR reaches late, your application is incomplete and you will not be considered for any admission. So tell your professors beforehand, and try to ask recommendations from the people that you know are going to give you good recommendations. Don't ask for people that you have some quarrel to pick up with. So because your LORs go directly to the universities and you don't get to see them. And in the whole process, you obviously have to be very reflective and very thoughtful in what you're doing. The deadlines are important in application. So if you have to consider that there are different time zones that you're applying to. So if you're going to plan to do your studies in Australia and the deadline is 31st January, 12 a.m., then you don't want to apply for 12 a.m. India timing, because you would already missed your deadline for Australia application. They are not, and it's like automated. It is not manual. No person is sitting there and doing it. So because it is automated, your application goes to the rejection directly based on just timeline. Okay, so if you're applying with US, you don't have that issue because US is behind the time zone, so that should be fine. But with other countries, you have to be very careful with the deadline as well. Don't wait till last minute to complete your application. Then is provide all the information in the format that is requested. Some people ask PDF format. Some universities ask like Word file. So keep your Excel sheet, mentioning everything that, oh, they need this things. I would say your SOPs should be honest, and you have to provide your personal stories, but that does not mean that you give excuses about your story. So if you have education gap in your whole profile, then don't make an excuse and say that, I did this and that's why. Try to wrap it up as a positive story that I was taking some work experience and that's why there is a gap. I was doing something very productive, and that's why, there is a lag in my education or anything. So because if you provide any negative story, that does not give any good impact to your application. Then your visa, yeah, it is one of the important process right now. So when you come to United States, there are three types of visa. You don't have to always come for masters and MBAs or PhDs. At that time, you do the F student visa, but you can come for exchange program for a year and you get J visa. You can come for like just a semester for on M visa. Uh, just remember that visa interviews are short, and you have to explain to the interviewer that why you want to study in United States, how you are going to do your funding, where are you going to stay, what are your plans after you graduate. So from my personal experience, I can say they are very nervous, nerve-breaking experiences. But my visa interview was less than 20 seconds. So I went to the visa interviewer and he just asked me, oh, what is your program name? Because my program name was very lengthy. So he just asked me to pronounce my program name and I was done. And then he said, welcome to Houston. And that's it. He didn't ask me any other question. So I was very lucky. But there was a guy before me, and he was some hospitality management student. And the visa officer was grilling him for 15 minutes. Um, Visa officer asked him that why not Germany? Oh, you are a chef, so what is your favorite dish? And that guy said chicken tikka. And then the interviewer was asking him that, can you tell me the recipe step by step? And that guy was literally telling him recipe step by step, that, dice your onion, dice your garlic and everything. So that can also happen in visa interview. So you have to be ready that certain situations like this come that you think you don't expect, but you can be asked anything. And then, yeah, you are ready to fly. So attend your pre-departure orientation, attend your cultural meetups before flying. This is important for your networking, that you understand that there are cultural differences and you're trying to cope up with them. Actually, I wanted to ask a question at this point, but I think there is some mistake with the poll. So I will probably ask you people to do the poll again. Can you just answer my third question for me? Do you think I can make a good counselor? Just the third question, don't answer the rest of the questions. And I'm waiting for you guys to answer this. And there are no replies yet. I said only third question. You people are still sleeping. I can make it that out, like completely, or hungover. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So I got I got 92%. They're saying I'm good, the counselor. So I'm happy with that. So with that, I want to say that whatever I said was just before COVID happened. So after COVID happened, situations have changed. The world is upside down, and it has impacted most of people's plan about studying in any of the countries abroad, like let's say UK or US. So to start with, COVID and USA, there are worldwide 7 million cases right now of COVID, out of which 2 million are in the United States. And US is like 4% of whole world population, but they are accounting for 30% of coronavirus cases, which is like huge. And that's why it has huge impact on economy, and the economy of United States has fallen by 4.8% in just first 3 months. And we are still waiting for the results of what is going to happen in the whole year. So economically, the situation is bad, and the unemployment rate is at all-time high of 14.70%, and it was till April. By May and June, the unemployment has increased to about 20%. So this is important statistics because this is affecting the decision of Indian students whether they want to come here, because the employment plays an important role for people to think about US as their first destination. So how it has impacted Indian students. So this part of the slides and everything from here is going to be very depressive, and I know it is going to be very sad, but I can't help it. I don't want to give any fake rosy image of that everything is good here. It is not. So it is going to be a bit sad, but bear with me. So you have been seeing all this news, like, yeah, Indian students are isolated here. They are stranded. They don't know where to go. because US government has not thought about it, that what is the implication of like doing all the social distancing, all the shutting down, all the lockdown on Indian students. Indian students are worried about their education loans. Some students who graduated, their visas are expiring, so they are very uncertain about their future. And some foreign universities were shut down, private universities were shut down, which has they just asked international students to just go back. Like they didn't provide any reason because university don't have any funding in COVID-19 situation. Uh, my university probably has done very good work, I would say, in this terms. I'm from University of Houston, so they did provide Indian students with financial help for the students who lost their jobs. So to take care of them and so that they can sustain in United States. So yeah, there are some universities, they are really doing good job in helping Indian students, but that is very tiny number. So yeah, dreams are becoming nightmare. Firstly, it started with closing campuses. So you have to understand that if you're trying to apply here, the campuses are already closed and they may or may not open for whole year. So for my university, they are not opening till September. So campuses are closed. University of Washington was the first to close their campus, and all other universities followed. Then California was the first state to say that we are going under lockdown, and because California, there are a lot of pharma in universities like University of Southern California and University of California State. It has impacted students who are doing their masters or doing their pharmacy program there, and everything just went virtual. And by April, whole country was under shutdown, and all format was online. This has impacted on the income of the students because Indian student or any international student is allowed to do on-campus job for 20 hours a week and only on-campus job. You cannot do off-campus job. It's illegal. So because campuses are closed, they cannot do this on-campus job. And because they cannot do on-campus job, they're finding it very difficult to pay their online, like their monthly, what do you call it, rent or monthly bills or everything. And they're staying on campus, and on-campus housing is very expensive, and so the COVID-19 lockdown has impacted many students in terms of their income and standard of living. And the main reason people come to United States is quality of education, and there has been a great dilution in the quality right now because you write in your SOPs that I want to work with this professor, I want to enjoy the gym, I want to enjoy the sports and everything in the university. All this is gone because campuses are closed. You cannot enjoy the state of art facilities, and you cannot collaborate with people as you could have done when you're in classroom because everything is virtual. Other thing is the libraries are closing down in the university. My university library has been closed for the last 3 months. And for some students that they share house with other people, they think for them, library is the only place that they can study quietly, and exams are coming up. They didn't cancel exams, so library was the only resource. But now students cannot enjoy that, and there is homesickness, there is loneliness, and there is no social connection. I was talking to my psychiatric department, and they told me that most of the students are undergoing depression right now, and the cases have increased. So for Indian students, they cannot go back to home to India because of the airlines and closing borders. So yeah, it's kind of scary. Other than that, I have friends, they are graduating in 2020, and they are still skeptical about what will happen, whether they will get a job. And because you have only 90 days after your graduation to get a job, and if you don't get your job within 90 days, you have to leave the country without a job. So that is also one of the fear right now. And companies are very skeptical about taking or giving a job to an international student. So they are on the wait and watch approach, and they are still thinking whether immigration is going to change or not. So yeah, the job opportunity is right now not so good. So I want to share a typical story. This is a story of most of the students who are doing their masters in the United States. And it is going to be the case for the people who are going to come in fall 2020 or summer 2021. So this is a typical case of a Mumbai student. She's doing her engineering at California State University. She came here in 2020, January, before the lockdown, and she needs to pay her 20,000 tuition fee, her insurance expenditure, and for that she has taken a student loan. And her monthly expenses of about $100,000 are taken care by her parents who are sending her money from India, converting Indian rupees to US dollars. So to think she's luckier than most in the respect in terms of finances. But then pandemic happened. Um, Indian rupee fell down by 10%. Now the INR to USD conversion is very costly, and because university shut down, campuses has shut down, she cannot actually experience what an American campus education is. She's being locked down in her small room, and she shares that room with two other people because California is very expensive. And in summer, Indian students are allowed to do part-time jobs for more than 20 hours. So those opportunities are gone because campuses are closed. And many companies shut down their internship programs. So there is no way that anybody can even take up summer job. So with all this tuition fees, with living expenses, with not safe environment around because you cannot step out of the house, this is going to be the situation for most of the students who are going to come in fall 2020, summer 2021. So you want to consider if you're going to begin your applications that these things can also happen. So a study was conducted before pandemic, and Indian students were asked why would they go for abroad education? What are the factors? And most of the students said that if they are going to study in India, the weather is one of the primary preference. That if it is a good weather, they are going to. That is their main condition of studying in India. But when it comes to abroad education, the students were saying that, I think people are still coming in. Yeah. Students are saying that, safety, job opportunities, university reputation, the employment and everything that plays a role. So when people are thinking of abroad education, they are thinking about job opportunities and safety. And right now the situation does not feel that safe and there are no job opportunities as such. So the study was conducted by Institute of International Education, and they were asking universities and colleges that what they think is going on or what they are doing in terms of the admission process. So the universities replied that 70% of them think that for summer 2020, 70% of the international students won't be coming to the campus, and about 16% of international students won't be coming to campus for fall 2020. So fall is like August. So they are not expecting students to come in person on campus because it's not possible right now. And so are they providing any solution to it? So only 2% said, 2% of persons of universities and colleges said that they are going to allow students to do full enrollment online. Like they don't have to come on campus. They can do it online. And 42% said that they will offer online instruction, but they cannot go all online. Like they are just asking students to take few time online, but then they have to come to campus. So if you're thinking that you want to come here for summer 2021 or even fall 2021, you have to be here. No university is going to do it online probably. Right, not right now. That's what study shows. Then specific to Indian students, it was found that 48% or more than that are going to get affected. And this is because Indian students normally take education loans and there will be the lower return of investment. The chances of jobs have reduced, and this all affects the decision of Indian students of applying here. But good news is that the STEM students or STEM professionals are in high demand right now. So engineers or pharmacists or medicine people, they are in high demand right now. So that is good news for them. Like it's not that bad for us, like those who are doing pharmacy and all. So immigration policies, these are important right now because as president has suspended the entry of immigrants, No student can come in even if they want to. Like even if you have your admission letter with you, you won't be allowed to enter United States. And this is done just to take care of the economy, to take care of the pandemic outbreak. But this will affect anybody who is trying for higher education here. But even then, the study showed that 30% of Indian students are still preferring United States as their first primary choice, and well, then UK and Germany. So the positives from the studies is that only 5.4% students are saying that they will cancel their abroad plan, and about 42.3% are saying that they are going to postpone their study plans. Students are ready to go all digital. They are okay with doing online study rather than in person. And 5.2% are saying that they are thinking of doing whole program virtually. They want to study in US universities, but they will be in India. So that is good. That if it is possible, it's good. So the cohort who was part of the study were mainly bachelor student and master student, like who are going to apply. So this is like majority of the cohort that today's audience is. And so I was talking to a few universities, and this is what they are suggesting. So they are saying if you want to come here and do your admission process and everything, just defer your admission. Even if you get an admission for, let's say, this year or next year, you probably would like to defer it by a year or a 1 semester or 2 semesters. And if online classes will be necessary all the time, like for all the time, because right now everyone is going online, campuses are closed, so you should be ready to do online classes. And student visas may be obtained on short notice. So right now there are no student visas given because immigration is at halt. But universities are proposing that because they are asking the embassy to open a small short window for students to come in and do their education. So it would happen before fall, that during the summertime, that probably embassy will open student visas for very short period of time. And if people want to get inside the United States, that should be an option. So I want to say that, yeah, situation is gloomy, but you want to stay positive. And I would say that, yeah, US economy will rebound and will rebound quickly. But if you're taking education loan, think about it. If you get an admission, I would say defer it by 1 year or defer it by 2 years, or because till the time the economy is back. And if you're choosing your major, be diligent. Like if you're going to planning, let's say pharmaceutical analysis as your major, then you want to see that yes, there are universities who are going to provide me that program with, like, the program has funding. Like university is going to sustain that program. They are just not going to shut down that program. Like be selective. Like if you want to do your ecology masters, then think about it that the ecology is good in that particular university. Like that particular university is known for the ecology and not analysis, not analytical sciences. So you should take admission in the universities that are good in what they are providing you, and not just because they are providing you admission. So my final thoughts are, um, yes, COVID has impacted everybody. Universities and students are ready to adapt to these changes, and it is inevitable that it is going to affect everyone's plan of studying and working. But online learning and deferring your admission rather than canceling your admission or rather than canceling your plans of studying abroad will be a better option. And you should do networking. And if you're applying to particular universities, speak to the students who are already in the program. They will tell you the real situation of what is happening, whether you should apply to the university or you should not apply to the universities, or what is going on. I know you guys actually saw my polls, but I wanted to know if I can. I don't know, Sarah, but I cannot see my polls. It's fine. Okay, yeah. So I want you guys to answer the last question for me, that do you guys have any weekend plans? I am waiting for people to answer that. Okay, can you guys see my results? And most of the people are saying they are nerds and they don't have any weekend plans. So I think it was a good idea to keep the webinar on Saturday because nobody was going anywhere. So it's okay. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. So if you have any question, I'm open to it. Happy weekend. My weekend just starts. And I want to thank Sahaya for helping me with the virtual, with all the IT setup. Yeah, it was a chaos, but thank you. So I'm open to questions if anybody has anything.
Can I ask?
Yes, yes.
So is on-campus accommodation more affordable or off-campus?
I would say off-campus. On-campus housing is very expensive because university take care of your all needs. Like they take care of your food, they take care of your laundry and everything. So on-campus housing is more expensive than you sharing your accommodation with other students. Off-campus is better.
I also have one more question.
Yes, please.
That is, in UK and Australia, like countries, is it the same rule that you can do only on-campus jobs and not off-campus jobs?
I think, yeah, it's the same. In UK, it's more strict. In UK, getting work permit or even doing on-campus job is more difficult than in the United States. I can say that because I have friends in UK and they're studying there. For finding on-campus job also in UK is more difficult than in the United States.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
If you don't want to ask, you can just chat. You can ask the question on the chat. I'm open to that as well. I can see a lot of the faculty there, but they are not on video, so I cannot see their faces. Like I can see Savita ma'am, but I think Abhijit sir is there.
Yeah, Prajakta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear ma'am.
Yeah. So thank you for that very nice session. You explained very well to the students what the future prospects are going to be. I mean, especially for those who are looking forward for higher education in the US. I'm sure the situation with respect to the job opportunities is quite grim at present, right?
Yeah, it is. Like
yeah,
my seniors are graduating and they're just looking for jobs. It's like just because of immigration policies, I would say.
Yeah. I saw that you mentioned that there is a period of 90 days till they can stay back post-graduation. But they also have this OPT period, right? Optional practical training.
Yes.
So does not that allow them to stay for about a year and then they can still use that 90 days as a time period for looking out for the job?
So the OPT period starts only when you have a job offer. So first you have 90 days after your graduation. You take your OPT when you get your job. So your job and OPT goes hand in hand. And after that, you have, like, if you're a STEM student, you have 36 months to stay in United States without any requirement of visa. But for that OPT to start, you need to have a job offer first.
Yeah, but then it's also, you can also have voluntary, non-paid jobs, like working with
non-paid jobs. So that's what my roommate is doing. So if you don't get a job, normally students go and do volunteering work, like community work or social work, and that will be considered as employment. You get a letter from them that, yeah, you're volunteering. It is a non-paid job, but yeah, it helps with your situation to stay in United States. But for people, when the finances are considered, it will be difficult to stay back.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, that is an option that most of the students do. But for pharmacy student, I would say it's not that difficult. The market is not that bad. I'm seeing this for mainly public health or management students. For pharmacy students, pharma market is not down. It is never down. On contrary, they are earning money right now. So pharma market is open.
Are the pharma companies also recruiting as of now? Recruitment, I think, is almost at a halt.
So because I was applying for my internship in summer, I was asking pharma people as well that what are they doing with hiring. So the big companies like Merck, AbbVie, and Gilead, they told me that they are hiring. There is no hiring freeze.
Okay.
Like they want people right now, and so big companies are not doing that, but there are consultancies and small firms. They even shut down their plant, they shut down their internship program. But I would say, like, it depends how lucky you are to get something or not. But still, but for pharma, it's not that bad. But visa is a thing right now because the students cannot get in even if they want to, because they are not providing visa.
Right. Sponsorship is difficult.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yes.
Is the condition in UK better during this pandemic, or is the US better comparatively?
I think you should call Merlin for the session. Merlin will be a perfect person to answer this. Like, I don't know what is happening in UK, but I am going to talk to Merlin tomorrow. So I'll ask her. But she was telling me, the job situation is bad in UK. And it is bad as usual. Like, you don't get work permit easily in UK or anything. So compared to US. So I can just say that I don't have any specific information of what is happening.
As of now, for Christopher, we are trying to get a guest lecture from Merlin, so you can ask this question.
Yeah, UK-based question you should ask to Merlin. And Shivam is asking me, is it necessary to take career counseling for abroad education? I would say no, but it depends on your choice. So I did not take any career counseling, but I was visiting United States and India Education Forum. So they are based in Churchgate. It's just like, I think $200 or $100, 100 rupees, sorry, not dollar, rupees membership. And you can just ask them about opportunities in US. You can ask them about university list. You can ask them to review your SOPs, your LORs. So, and they are actually like US employees. So it is like, what do you call, like good source than any career counseling where you have to pay so much of fees just to get a counseling advice. So I would say if you want to consider any counseling option, you better go to USIF than anywhere else, because those people are like real resources of what is happening here. So, and it is not even costly, and you can use their libraries and everything within those membership fees. So I use USIF, and they were really, really helpful. So I can say you can do that. And yes, but if you are not familiar with the admission process, then yeah, you need somebody's help. That's what I can tell you, Shivam. But otherwise, I don't think you need to go for career counseling.
Prajakta, can you just share with students? You after your BPharm, you went in for a placement, then you went in for your post-graduation, and then the PhD. So many of them plan to go directly after BPharm first. So I mean, what is the, how would you advise students on how to go by the career path from your experience?
So like our few alumni, they went directly after BPharm, right, for their masters. I think Nikita and Amruta, I meet them. So for them, it was like they didn't want to do any job. Like they don't have any plan of doing the job here. That's why. So, but it's on your personal, whatever you want to do. So I did it because I thought I want to know how pharma works or how industry works. I wanted to know before directly going for masters was not my idea, just to understand what the market is like. So that's why I took a job in TCS. I worked with AstraZeneca, and I got to know, like, other than lab, there is like this pharmacovigilance and drug regulatory affairs. I'm not a lab person. I used to hate going to labs. So for me, those jobs are probably easier, like regulatory affairs. And I wanted to do my master's in regulatory affairs. So then I did that in NMIMS just because I was doing a job in pharmacovigilance. It gave me an idea what I want to pursue my master's in. After BPharm, probably I would have gone for ecology or pharmaceutical analysis. But maybe the job experience gives you a perspective of what you want to do in terms of your master's. So when I did my master's, I was in Glenmark, and I was working in pharmacovigilance and regulatory affairs. There I got to know, because I was working for US market and Europe market, I got to know that there is something called as health economics. There is something called as outcome research, which is very, very much done in United States because the healthcare system is based on insurance. So that's why I thought of applying for my PhD specifically in health outcomes. So if you are not clear, like what master's you want to do or what PhD you want to do, probably going and seeking a job and getting a perspective would be a good idea. Otherwise, if you have somebody to guide you, it would be easier. I would say I didn't have anybody to guide me, so probably I took up a job to understand what I want. And I think, yeah, pretty good at it. So yeah, I like doing this. I would say do something that you enjoy. If you don't enjoy doing it, then just for the sake of applying masters, don't do it, because I've heard people apply masters just to get in United States, but then they drop from the program. So that's not helpful. So I would say that. Any further questions?
Students, if you have any questions.
You can ping me. Yeah.
And none of our other alumni students were there.
Hello, Norma ma'am. I was hoping to see your face. All the faculty is like behind the camera. I was hoping to see everyone today. You're on mute, I guess. I cannot hear you. Can you hear her? I cannot.
Norma, you're not audible.
Norma ma'am wants to say that I am the most notorious student she ever had. She wants to say that. I am telling you, ask Sahaya. Okay, Christopher is asking me about scholarship and MBA, GMAT. Yes, so for MBA, if you want to do MBA in United States, you need GMAT as an entrance exam. There are some colleges that take GRE as entrance for MBAs as well. There are some colleges that only take TOEFL. They don't need GRE. There are some that will take IELTS. So there are multiple options. Just research your options with the universities, like what they're asking for. And they're asking me about scholarships. So yeah, so if you get like good GRE score, you get scholarships. So as simple as that. So if you get your GRE score above 320, you can expect a scholarship. Get your TOEFL scores above 120, and there is chances of scholarship. So when I applied for my PhD, I got scholarship only because of my GRE score and my TOEFL score. And that really helps you with your expenses and everything. So I would say if you're doing your standardized exams, focus on GRE 320 plus, IELTS 8, and TOEFL about 110 plus. And that should be helpful with your scholarship. Okay, they're asking me Canada. So I already gave IELTS, and now I'm just wondering if I should give GRE and GMAT. So if you're doing Canada, Canada is okay with IELTS, but there are some universities in United States that they take IELTS also. So you don't have to give TOEFL, but GRE is something that most of the university want as their primary requirement. So probably if you're thinking US, give GRE. Okay, they are asking me, do extracurriculars and skills add credit alongside entrance scores? So yes, so the admission process is like you have a pointers for everything. So they will see your GPA, you get 1 point. They will see your GRE score, you get few points. For everything, there is a point. So yes, your extracurricular and your skills do matter. They add to your application, but you need to understand that you are writing some genuine skills and some extracurricular that is related to your field. So they do matter in application, but try to mention them in your statement of purpose as well. So they will be helpful. Okay, Norma ma'am has written something. Okay, well, Prajakta, you truly said it. Yes, see, I know you are going to say that. Enjoy whatever you do. Prajakta was the most notorious one. See, she's saying that. But definitely stayed focused to see you at your peak so far. Thank you. I had trouble Norma ma'am a lot, so I can say that. And we were very, very scared of her. I am sure you people are also scared of her even now. She is like, Sahaya is still scared of Nama, ma'am. Ask me.
I agree.
See?
With due respect.
So do I have any more questions?
Can we conclude the session?
No, there is a question like, do we need some additional benefits if we have article printed in reputable journals? Yes. So publications matter. So if you have publications, it adds extra points, like more points than your extracurricular or other voluntary work. So yes, if you have publication in good journals, definitely make it a point to mention it in your SOP, make it a point to write it in your CV, but take up reputed journals, I would say. Yes, it helps. Publications are like they are something very important in terms of your research. Like if you're planning for some research based program, then yeah, publication is something that you want. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Rajata, can you hear me?
Yes.
There is one question from Rebecca on Facebook.
Okay.
She's asking about the best regulatory college in US.
Okay, I am not the right person to say, but you have to research about it. But I know a few universities in Boston and New York, which are very good with regulatory. Like I know Northeastern University in Boston. They are good with their regulatory program. They are good with their placements. She can contact actually Lavita for that if she has any questions about regulatory, because Lavita did her master's in regulatory affairs in Boston.
Okay, thank you.
That's Jagan, right?
Yes.
Should I call you Jagan sir now?
No. You're officially, you're my junior now.
No, I'll always be a senior. He used to rag me in, like when I was in NMIMS, he used to rag me as, like I was his junior then. So he used to always say that I am not your junior anymore, you're my junior.
Thank you, Prajakta.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Melissa is saying, can you suggest colleges for masters in pharmacology? I cannot. You have to do your research for that because I don't know any pharmacology colleges. My college has pharmacology, but that is only PhD program, University of Houston. I don't know their ranking in ecology program, but the pharmacy college has good ranking. That's why I like the University of Houston is like 6th in ranking in pharmacy school. So you may want to probably see University of Houston or some colleges like that. Okay. Do they have any other questions? I don't think there are any questions.
So I think no more questions, and I would just like to say something at least. I'm very happy that the Budding Alumni Association of St. John's has come up with this initiative, taken time to organize and put this together. Sahaya and Jagan have been working, and with Heram in the background, though we didn't see Heram online, I think he's on Facebook. Yeah, so a very good initiative. Continue, and we would like to see this as a continuing series. So Prajakta did mention so many of our other students who are there in the US and in other countries. And I think they should all also, we should try and get in touch with them, where they could address our junior students. I mean, a lot more of information, a lot more of sharing. And of course, such kind of personal experiences which are shared will help the next generation to make good choices and make very, I would say, calculated decisions about their entire future, especially since the entire scenario will change after the COVID-19, which the entire situation world over is changing drastically. I think these experiences are going to make a very, very important part of the decisions that all of you will be taking, especially our young students who are in the final year, third year, planning for post-graduation, planning for getting into jobs. I mean, how you should select, what you should do. I think that's really important. So thanks, Prajakta, for making that start for us. and being, the first person to come on this series and addressing students. Also, I mean, from the first batch. So really, I think that's a very good initiative. So congratulations to the Alumni Association members who have coordinated well together. So keep doing this. And while we as faculty will do our work, but I think it's the Alumni Association that needs to really pull your entire strength of students to make SGIPR one of the happening places, not only in the college or within the university, but all over the world. So thank you very much, and over to Sahaya to conclude.
Thank you, ma'am. To conclude with, as it is rightly said, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. I would like to thank our today's speaker, Ms. Prajakta Masurkar, for her valuable insight and guidance to our dear students. I believe our students have got a virtual tour of the process to apply for overseas education. Uh, Many thanks to again our speaker for sparing her time in her busy weekend and addressing
It's
us.
Saturday night now. It's Saturday. It's 12:30 a.m.
No sleep. Also, we would like to promise our students for such exciting sessions in the coming days. Uh, Thanks are due to our dear principal, ma'am, Dr. Savita Tauro, for her constant motivation and support. It was her initiative that we came up with such program, and we are hoping that in future we will continue with this series. With this, I would like to end our today's session. Hope you all had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Savita ma'am. Bye.
So all the best.
Good morning, actually. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
End meeting for all. Huh?